neutral view on many issues. I've been attacked again and again. And I am the most physically and verbally attacked public figure or politician of modern times. Yes, you will know of some of the incidents, milkshakes thrown in my face, placards bashed over my head, but let me promise you, you only know about a fraction of the number of times that I've been assaulted. It would seem from the last couple of years, from the way I've been treated, that the press would rather our members of Parliament had no assets and no wealth at all. They seem to fundamentally object to any MP that has outside income. Indeed, they view those that have continuing business interests with severe scepticism. Making money is not a crime. Let me be absolutely clear. After the furore and the media pile-on, well, not just the media, the other political parties too, let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And you know, for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero. I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which would happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win, and we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain. For over 20 years now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening. It is Petrie here with you for the next 3 hours. And coming up at midnight, it's your chance to talk back. And we will be talking about Nigel Farage. Again, not about his money this time, not about his donations this time, but about whether you believe that he is truly fighting the establishment, or is he running scared? That's the question, really. Is he trying to distract from what's going on with the donations? Because this is a really weird thing for him to do. It really is a very strange thing to do. And he's saying that, look, I'm going to put this to the test. I'm going to let the people of Clacton be the judge as to whether I've done anything wrong or not. The problem with that is that the people of Clacton haven't been part of the inquiry. Neither have I. Neither have you. None of us know what the inquiry is going to find out. So how can they be true judges of what's been going on if they haven't got all the facts and all the questions answered? And, of course, this won't stop parliamentary scrutiny on the members' interests. It won't stop the inquiry going on as to what Nigel Farage did or didn't do with that £5 million. Because that will continue, and there could still be a suspension, and that could trigger, guess what, a by-election. So poor old Clacton could have 2 by-elections going on. And in this first one, it appears that Count Binface is going to stand against Nigel. Also, we've just heard Carol Vorderman. I know. Carol Vorderman could stand against Nigel Farage. This is getting weirder by the second, right? But it doesn't appear that any of the other main parties are going to do so. The Greens might, but they're waiting to hear back from Clacton. But that would be just such an embarrassment. And it is a gamble, because although Nigel Farage is popular, and there's no doubting that around the country, Nigel Farage is popular and he will get a lot of the votes. What if he doesn't get all of them? What if he doesn't win? What then? I mean, this is a real unnecessary gamble. So I want to know from you whether you think this is action or distraction. Is this about him taking the initiative, fighting the establishment, fighting the good fight? Or is this about him trying to distract from what is going on? It just seems to me to be a very strange and unnecessary thing to do. And not just because of the cost of it, 230k. I know Reform have offered to pay for that, but there are reasons that they can't pay for that. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. I'm going to be looking at all the constitutional rules and all those bits and pieces at 11:45. This evening, we're going to be digging deeper into what's actually happened, you know, all those nitty-gritty bits a little bit later. Also going to be talking about the NATO meeting where Donald Trump has reiterated that he wants Greenland. So we've got lots to talk about there as well. And of course, we have the papers between 11 and 12, and that is John Boothman. So, but let's kick off by talking about Nigel Farage stunning Westminster today by announcing his resignation as an MP, thereby triggering a Clacton by-election where he intends to run again. Now, he claimed he's stepping down to clear his name amid a furious row over undisclosed financial donations and escalating standards investigations. He fiercely attacked the media, citing breaches of his daughter's privacy as the final straw. Well, as I said, supporters praise this defiant political gamble, whilst critics just are saying this is just a stunt. This is a fake by-election. This doesn't mean anything, and it's not a mandate on anything. How can he say this is going to clear his name? How would it clear his name when we don't have all the inquiry in front of us? Anyway, look, we need to discuss this further. So Kevin Schofield is joining me now, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. I specifically woke up from my afternoon nap to listen to Nigel Farage this afternoon. What did you make of his speech?
Well, I thought he was a very angry man.
Yeah.
He said it's the angriest that he's ever been. He's angry at Sky News, who he says have been harassing his daughter. He's angry at the Times for publicising the house where she lives. He's angry at the Sunday Times for writing their story about George Cottrell, the convicted criminal, and giving support to Nigel Farage. I think, I've got to be honest with you, I thought it was slightly genius, actually, that he managed to get the national broadcasters to basically run what was effectively a 15-minute party political broadcast.
Absolutely.
Unedited for the Reform Party. I mean, he went through all of his greatest hits before making his announcement right at the very end that he was going to stand down. So that was quite a smart move, really. But in terms of the substance, I completely agree with you, Petrie. I don't really see what purpose this by-election serves other than a bit of an ego trip for Nigel Farage. He's obviously supremely confident that he's going to win it, and it's all about, you know, sending a message, people versus the establishment, all this type of thing. But it doesn't really change anything, you know. It doesn't get him off the hook as far as his parliamentary standards investigation. That will just be paused now until he comes back, and then it will start again.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is just a massive distraction, I think.
Yeah, it was interesting to me, some of the wording that he chose to use when he was standing there and he said, I have not broken any law. And he's right. Okay, there is no, we're not talking, nobody's accusing him of breaking the law, right? But he chose to use that word instead of rules. And I always listen out for these little bits where you think, well, hang on, what? You know, nobody's accusing you of that. Why have you chosen that word? And why have you done it that way? Maybe I read too much into it. Maybe that's what he meant. But he's a smart guy. And he has broken no law. Being given money is not against the law, right? Unless it's, you know, it was a national crime agency, wasn't it, that flagged it because they were worried about money laundering. I mean, if I sent you more than £10,000, which obviously I do on a regular basis, then that gets flagged, right, because of money laundering laws. So that's how that's how it was discovered. But if he can prove that it's not money laundering, then he's broken no law. But that's a different thing from the rules.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely bang on there, Petrie. He specifically said, I haven't broken any laws, but that's a bit of it's completely a straw man, isn't it? No one's accusing him of that.
No, exactly.
It's the MP's code of conduct is what he is accused of breaking. Now, he obviously insists that he hasn't, that he's taken legal advice, and the advice he's received is that he's not broken the MP's code of conduct either. That will be a decision for the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. And we're in this bizarre situation, as I think you alluded to earlier, where we'll have this by-election that he has brought into being in the next maybe 4 or 5 weeks. But then we could potentially have another by-election in Clacton forced on him by the fact that he may well be found guilty and then suspended from Parliament for more than 10 working days. So I feel a bit sorry for the poor people of Clacton.
Yeah.
Not one, but 2 by-elections between now and Christmas, which seems a sort of cruel and unusual punishment for them. But it seems at the moment to be backfiring on Nigel Farage. You know, Labour, the Lib Dems, the Conservatives, even Restore Britain have said they will not play his game. They won't dance to Nigel Farage's tune by standing candidates in this by-election. And right now, the only person who's absolutely confirmed he's standing is Count Binface.
I mean, how is that going to play out for Nigel? Because if the other parties, and it is a genius stroke by then, it's not the first time this has happened, of course, but this is they're saying we're not going to play this game. So it'd be totally embarrassing because it's not a victory, is it? If he's the only, one of 2 people standing, he can't then claim this moral victory or any kind of victory, really, even if he got all the votes.
No, exactly, and you know he won't get all the votes either. I mean,
no.
The bizarre situation is, I'm sure he would win, but Count Binface, who a bit of a comedy character, he stands in every by-election going and usually gets no more than, maybe if he's lucky, 100 votes.
Yeah.
But this time, he will be able to scoop up votes from every anti-Nigel Farage voter in the constituency. So he could end up getting potentially thousands of votes. Now, Nigel Farage will still win, but it was slightly embarrassing, I think, if it's only him and Count Binface standing there on the stage beside the returning officer as he reads out the result. And it'll be, great victory, Nigel. You beat a guy dressed as a bin.
Yeah.
It's not really sticking it in the eye of the establishment, really, if the establishment refused to play ball. So it is. I think he may well be wondering tonight whether he's made the right call, because that could be really embarrassing, I think.
I mean, totally embarrassing. I mean, especially if he did lose. I mean, to count.
Oh, can you imagine that? Oh my word.
To count Binface, and then I was just saying in the Commons, you just got this big bin sitting in as an independent MP, but it seems like a rash decision. I can't imagine that he, for a moment, thought that the other big parties wouldn't run against him. I mean, because that is a real situation he's now facing, and he can't back out of this now, right?
No, well, he can't look back out of it without looking foolish. Going to such lengths as this big big speech and then making a big song and dance about it. And then if he was to decide, oh, actually, because other parties aren't playing ball, then I'm not going to do it. I think it's too late for that. He's going to have to keep going. And yeah, I can totally understand why the other parties have said, no, wait a minute, we're not going to play ball.
Yeah.
But we'll wait until the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner comes back later in the year. And if there's a by-election then as a result of his findings, then obviously we will stand in that one. But we're not going to stand in this one. And yeah, they're clearly trying to embarrass him. And, is this really going to be a campaign? Is he going to be out campaigning day after day against a guy dressed as a bin? It's farcical, really. And I'm not sure what kind of point it would prove to be elected.
I just don't know where we are politically at the moment. I thought this was going to be a really quiet summer, right? And then we've got Andy Burnham to the left of us and Nigel Farage to the right. This is, when you say unprecedented, it sounds a bit trite now, but this is extraordinary.
Well, yeah, just when you think that maybe British politics might just pause for breath, maybe calm down a little bit, something like this comes along out of left field to make you think again. And I'm sure that Andy Burnham, he's going to become Prime Minister on July the 20th. He will no doubt have had a plan for a whole August full of government initiatives and announcements and speeches perhaps and interviews. And even that's going to be sort of blown off course by this circus going on down in Clacton. It's all just bizarre. And I just think, what must voters make of it all? They must just be scratching their heads thinking, can you guys just not sort of get on with it?
Yeah, just get on with doing what you're supposed to be, what we're paying you for, and what you're supposed to be doing. With looking at Clacton, he's saying this will be a way of proving that he didn't do anything wrong, right? That this proves his innocence. But again, how? Just a local by-election is not a mandate to say he's not guilty. And also the people of Clacton presumably would want to know the facts of the case before they made a decision, if that is the one decision they've got to make, as to whether he did anything wrong or not. And he hasn't answered any questions, really.
Well, he hasn't, and he didn't answer any questions today. I thought that was interesting, that he made the big speech, but there was no press conference. He didn't answer any. There was no journalists there to answer many questions. And he's been really invisible, by and large, over the last 2 or 3 months. Since the story broke about the £5 million gift, he's popped up here and there. He had a disastrous broadcast round 2 or 3 weeks ago where he was really angry and thin-skinned and ratty. And tomorrow, interestingly, it's Zia Youssef who's been sent out to do the morning broadcast round of media interviews, and not Nigel Farage. You would think it would be Nigel Farage. He's going to be the candidate. He's the one who's made this big announcement. You think he might want to answer some questions on it, but he's not. And I think is quite significant as well. And the other thing that he can't control is what other stories are going to break between now and the by-election. Does the Guardian have more dirt on him? Does it have more stories about, or does the Times, the Sunday Times, do they have more stories on his financial arrangements, things that could come out during the election campaign to embarrass him? Now, it might not necessarily mean he would lose the by-election, but again, it would just be another distraction and something that he could well do without.
Well, that is the thing, isn't it? That you can bet your bottom dollar. Once there's a scab on something, people start picking at it, and that is exactly what to begin with, it was just a Guardian. Then it was just a Guardian and the Times. Now it's going to be everybody, and we know how the press works, and everybody will be looking for something to try and. But this again, a lot of people say yes, but that's proof the establishment is after him. But this happens all the time to all people who are in the public eye. This isn't shocking me and going, oh, well, it's because it's Nigel Farage. It's because this is what happens.
Well, yeah, I don't remember Nigel Farage and Reform complaining when it was Peter Mandelson who was at the centre of controversy, when it was Keir Starmer being severely criticised over his free glasses and free suits and tickets to Taylor Swift concerts and things like that. Reform weren't complaining then. So the idea that Nigel Farage is the only politician who gets scrutinised and maybe criticised by the media is complete baloney. But that is obviously the sort of strategy that they're trying to pursue. It's a very Trumpian strategy about, fake news, the mainstream media, they're all out to get me. You can't believe a word they say. I'm the victim in all of this. I'm the most attacked politician in the country. All of this stuff, that is obviously the strategy that they're trying to pursue. As I say, it's been imported completely from America. But Britain isn't America. And our political system and our voters really don't take the same approach, I don't think, to those in America. And I think he may well find it. I've no doubt, listen, he'll win the by-election. I've got no doubt about that whatsoever. But
it'd be a hollow win.
A hollow victory, a Pyrrhic victory, really, and it will, at the end of the day, it'll be, well, what was the point of that, It'll be 4 weeks he'll have spent as not an MP, he'll beat Count Binface to become an MP again, and then that'll be it. He'll still have that investigation still hanging over him. We'll wait to see how that goes. There may well be further revelations about his personal financial arrangements, and nothing will have changed about the story at all, other than he resigned and got re-elected. It's all a bit odd, really.
And I mean, he has had it all his own way with certain sections of the media up until recently, but it does seem that those worms are turning a little bit. That not everybody is just, I think that's why he got so angry in that recent round of Brexit interviews that he did, the 10th anniversary of Brexit, because he wasn't used to it. He wasn't used to actually being pushed by journalists, because a lot of journalists have been, in a sense, a bit afraid to do that. But now it seems that people are not afraid now to push him or to push Zia Youssef or Tice or any of them. Do you see that there's a shift at all?
I think there's a little, but I think as journalists, you go where the story is, and the story right now is about Nigel Farage's financial arrangements. Is the fact he's been investigated by Parliament's Standards Commissioner. It's the fact that he is avoiding scrutiny over it. And it's the fact that he's sort of, the shine has come off. They've had 2 years of plain sailing, really.
Yeah, they have.
Polls, they've done well in local elections. Not so much in by-elections, it has to be said. They've not got a great record in by-elections, but by and large, they've had a pretty good run. Now things are getting a little bit dicey. Of course, that becomes the story. It's something new. It's something out of the ordinary, certainly over the last 2 years. And that's what comes with the territory. And you think that somebody who'd been in politics for as long as Nigel Farage has would realise that. So he's just going to have to roll with the punches, unfortunately for him. And he's going to have to maybe start answering some questions, start explaining why he feels he hasn't broken any rules. But the longer he tries to dodge scrutiny, then the more difficult it's going to be for him, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because there's been some chatting from the inside of Reform, saying that it's a bit chaotic as well, that the party isn't pulled together, that Nigel Farage, there's no meetings, for example, they don't all get together and have it's a little bit chaotic, and there's some people within Reform who seem to be breaking out now and saying things like that.
Yeah, and I think there is definitely a split in the party between those who were in at the beginning, who were maybe in UKIP, the Brexit party, who've been with Nigel Farage for a very long time, the sort of original reformers, and your conservative defectors, your Robert Jenricks, your Nadeem Zahawi, Suella Braverman, and people like that. And there's a suspicion, I think, between both camps, and a split as to what path Reform should pursue going forward. And I've spoken to Reform people as well. There's supporters of Nigel Farage who've said he's clearly under a lot of pressure. He's stressed. He's tired. He could actually do with a bit of a break.
Yeah.
But rather than take a break, he's now called a by-election, so he's going to be campaigning.
Yeah.
For
that was David Bull, wasn't it, who was saying he looks tired?
David
as
Bull
a friend. Yeah, as a friend, he said, I wish he would take some time off.
Well, he said that, and he was the chairman up until
he was. Recently. Yeah.
So, he wasn't an insignificant figure. So it was, and yet, as I say, he's not going to take a break. He's not taking his foot off the gas. He's decided to create this by-election. He's going to spend the next 4 or 5 weeks campaigning in it. So it seems to me like a bit of an overreaction to his situation. It's clearly an attempt to distract from the story. But to what end, I'm not so sure. And as we said earlier, it may well backfire because it's going to be him probably versus Count Binface.
I mean, again, just fascinating. My hopes of a quiet summer gone. Good to speak to you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Really love that. Kevin Schofield there, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. Right, quick break. Back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you, and at midnight it's your chance to talk back. It's a full hour of just you and me having conversations. And I want to ask you about Nigel Farage. Do you think this is him taking action against the establishment, or is it simply a distraction? Is it just buying time, where the inquiries into his donors will be held off for a while this goes on? Because it doesn't stop the scrutiny. It won't stop. It doesn't matter what Clacton says. It's the parliamentary standards people who will make a deliberation and a decision, looking at all the facts, as to whether Nigel Farage should have declared this money. Now, like I was saying yesterday, this isn't about whether he should have accepted the money or not. That is not the point. Nobody cares. And when he was talking today about, everybody's got a problem with MPs earning money outside of their jobs, of their first job. No, nobody cares if you earn money. No one. Clacton might. I mean, that's between Nigel Farage and his constituents, right? If he's too busily distracted earning money elsewhere, not doing his job as a constituency MP, then they have a right to complain about that. I don't. You don't. It's nothing to do with us. So nobody's worried about him earning money. And I thought that was a little minxy in his speech today as well, when he talked about that. It's not about earning money. It's about being gifted money and not declaring it. That's the point, because we need to know why that money was gifted. And if it's all above board, that will be decided, and he will be found to have done nothing wrong. But like I said, it was the National Crime Agency that flagged this £5 million going into his bank account. And as I was just saying to Kevin there, I'm not allowed to give money to my sister that is £10,000 without it flagging a money laundering questionnaire and all that nonsense. So it's only right that was flagged, right? That we all get flagged. So it was only right that was flagged. There's nothing suspicious about that. There's nothing singling Nigel Farage out about that. That happens to all of us. So it's not about earning money. It's not about any of that. I don't care. And it's not about breaking the law, because he's broken no law, right? It's about the rules. And if he broke those rules, there are consequences. And those consequences could lead to another by-election further down the road. So the people of Clacton really can't make that decision, or they can make that decision for Clacton, but they can't really make that. They're not going to get rid of the inquiry. I just don't understand it. I genuinely just think it's just a weird thing to do. Just weird. Anyway, I'd like to hear from you. Do you think he's done the right thing in making this the establishment versus the people? Which I thought a general election would more than likely do that. But look, he is a man of action. He's decided to take this particular action. So Do you support him on that? Do you think he's right to do that? Or do you think this is just distracting? This is just another distraction? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. You can send a message as well. Text the word talk and then your message to 87222. In the meantime, the FIFA World Cup has kicked off. Hang on a minute. There's been full swing. I've got the wrong script. Right, here we go. The 2026 World Cup is well and truly in full swing. We're marking a massive month of football in style here on Talk. How would you feel about pocketing an amazing £26,000 completely tax-free? Just picture that heading straight into your bank account. You could sort out the mortgage, take a proper holiday. It's a good chunk of money, isn't it? If your balance needs a serious lift this summer, here is everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie with you. We've just seen some breaking news that the US has begun strikes on Iran. We'll get more information on that at the moment, but the US military strikes in response to attacks on vessels, must be in the Strait of Hormuz, but the US has begun strikes on Iran. We'll bring you more on that as soon as we get it. And, of course, NATO is meeting. It's the 36th NATO summit underway in Turkey's capital, Ankara, chaired by Secretary-General Mark Rutte. The event draws leaders from 32 member states, including US President Donald Trump, and those who are not part of NATO, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Well, day one's primary highlight was a defence industry forum unveiling billions in new contracts. And I heard Mark Rutte talking this morning, and it was clearly a message to Donald Trump. Look, you know, we're spending all of this money extra. You know, all of these Americans are being employed to build these weapons that we've put in bids for and contracts for. So he was clearly sending Donald Trump a message to say, look, we may not be spending as much as you want, but we have upped our spending, $400 million that he was talking about, an advanced fleet, an Airbus fleet, and advanced surveillance aircraft, accelerating the European military modernisation and transatlantic burden sharing. Well, speaking to reporters at the summit during a press conference with the Turkish President Erdogan, the US President has once again said he's keen on taking control of Greenland and warned that he would take American troops out of Europe. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Professor Anthony Glees, who's a Security and Intelligence Studies Professor at Buckingham University. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining me. He can't help himself, can he, Donald Trump?
Sorry, technical problem. Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you. Donald Trump can't help himself, can he? I mean, he even said, "Look, this is why I fell out with lots of European allies, but we need Greenland."
Yes, in many ways, it's absolutely extraordinary because this was needed to be a really important meeting, and it needed to be focused on the biggest single threat facing NATO members, and that is the Russian threat. Yes, there is the problem of Iran there, and yes, Iran borders on a NATO member, Turkey, and is of concern to the Turks. But apart from Turkey and the United States of America, Iran is a problem that should not obsess us here in Europe. We ought to be far more focused on the Russian threat, whether it's a threat from Eastern Europe, the Baltic republics, spreading into Western Europe, or as likely, perhaps even more likely, that threat comes from the high north, from the frozen, unfreezing Arctic, and faces us in the UK directly, along with our allies, Norway. That's really what the focus should be on. And by lobbing bombs at Iran, President Trump is in a way displaying American weakness here, because not only does it show the war America and Israel have waged against Iran has not been won by Israel and America, but that it makes NATO look even more fragmented. The one thing we should never, ever forget is that the person who is probably listening most keenly to what's going on right now in Turkey, and will go on tomorrow, is Vladimir Putin.
Of course. Yeah.
And anything that gives him heart is to escalate the threat against us here.
And to see the destruction of NATO, which is what he's always wanted. And he will know that any attempt by Donald Trump to take Greenland would fracture the alliance completely, without any chance of any kind of resilience stepping in. I mean, that would fracture it down the middle.
Absolutely. You cannot grab territory off a NATO ally and expect them to be an ally. Now, you can kind of say, oh, Trump, he is getting very old. He says all kinds of things. He likes being provocative, and he doesn't always follow through. But if you look at the essence of what Trump has done with America, he may have strengthened the American economy. The jury's still out on that. But he has certainly not shown that America is strong enough to defeat Iran. I mean, many Americans are saying when Trump declared the war against Iran would end with the surrender, everybody assumed it would be the surrender of Iran. But actually, it's been the surrender of America. And turning to Europe, we are America's best allies. There's no question about that. Yet Trump seems to be going out of his way to provoke and humiliate his best friends. Now, to some people, that looks really balmy. To Putin, it is music, the finest music to his ears. And it follows that we in Europe must adapt to that. Now, whether we in the United Kingdom are best placed to tell our European NATO allies, and Canada is essentially on our side here, how they ought to conduct themselves, that is a real difficulty too. Although we here are already under Russian attack, people don't understand that as clearly as they should. Yes, they're not Russian troops in Britain, but they are going through our waters. They are very carefully mapping our critical national infrastructure. They've sabotaged our Prime Minister's house and a car that he was thought to have. So they've done all sorts of things and are doing all sorts of things. Vast number of cyber attacks caused by Russia. We are on the front line, in the front line of this country, and yet we cannot even meet the defense target that NATO itself has agreed we should be meeting. So we are in peril, but we're also in a perilous position compared to our NATO allies. And Trump hates weak people. He hates losers. You're going to confront a British Prime Minister who is on his way out, who hasn't delivered. It's hard to think of anything that could be a clearer recipe for disaster than a NATO summit that goes off at half-cock, or even worse, is disrupted by the American president. Nobody would have believed this was possible even 4 years ago.
And it really is a hand grenade into this NATO meeting, because there's a lot being said about him trying to distract from the disaster that has been the conflict with Iran. And I just the breaking news there about the US military launching a series of strikes against Iran. The US Central Commander said in a post, adding that the strikes were in response to what it said were Iranian strikes on 3 commercial vessels that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz. And the US military said Iran's demonstrated aggression was unwarranted, dangerous, and a clear violation of the ceasefire. So this ceasefire, which Donald Trump needs to hold.
Absolutely. I mean, there's
more
no
than Iran
question.
does.
Yeah, more than Iran. More than Iran. What Trump has not understood is that in taking on Iran, he is taking on an Islamist, jihadist, revolutionary regime. And they don't need cities to fight him. They don't need intercontinental ballistic missiles to fight him. They don't even need cruise missiles to fight him. Give them knives and give them caves in which to hide, and they will carry on fighting. So that's why this is not a victory for America. It is a defeat for America. But turning to the other things that we're being told, I mean, in the UK, for example, it's always said we need to learn the lessons from Ukraine. And that, again, has been in Sir Keir Starmer's defence investment plan. And it sounds wonderful. You know, we're going to put money into drones. We're not going to put money into destroyers. Wonderful. That's learning from Ukraine. No, excuse me, Petrie, that's not learning from Ukraine. If we look at what Ukraine is doing, they have 800 to 900,000 personnel under arms and ready for active service. They have conscription of everybody over the age of 25. They have, unfortunately, not good enough at the moment, but they have huge anti-missile devices in Ukraine to at least stem some of the Russian rockets. We have virtually nothing in the United Kingdom. We have no Iron Dome. And the one thing we do have, half a dozen Type 45 destroyers, they're not going to be replaced in Sir Keir's plan. So we are defenseless. And when it comes to conscription, you know, politicians throw up their hands in horror. Yet that's what Ukraine is teaching. If you want to deter Putin, you have to show that you're prepared to fight him. That is the way to deter Putin. What we're showing is that we still prefer to spend vast amounts of money on social welfare rather than keeping ourselves safe. And again, music, the finest music to Putin's ears. Unless there is something dramatic happens tomorrow, what it might be, I cannot imagine, but something dramatic, Putin will come away from this NATO summit heartened, the winner. Iran's not interested in any case, as I say, in what's going on there. Iran will ultimately be the winner, and Trump will have to go. He may have the biggest aeroplane in the world, but I'm afraid he's got the worst possible strategy for containing someone who is as much an enemy to him. America is as vulnerable via the frozen north as is the United Kingdom. Trump always says, oh, you know, the war in Ukraine, we have an ocean that divides us from Ukraine. And the United States of America. That's not true.
That's not
America
true.
is very vulnerable.
It's right there. If you look around the other side of the map,
right.
it's kind of
absolutely
a bridge
absolutely.
across to Russia.
They've forgotten to tell President Trump
that the map goes
back.
round. Yeah, I think that's what he looks at, is just at that flat. But the thing is, though, with Russia, there's been rumours about them attempting a strike of some kind on a NATO country, or, you know, to try and figure out what NATO would do. And that's the next stage in this, isn't it? Is for a deliberate attempt by Russia to rattle our cages, to see our response, to see how serious we are, and indeed if America will leave us in the cold.
Absolutely. As I say, our cage is already being rattled. And what more graphic rattling of a cage can there be than to firebomb a house owned by the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer? They're already doing it. They did it in Salisbury. They do it all the time, acts of sabotage. But in doing horizon scanning for what might happen, it's been said most recently by our former Defence Secretary, John Healey, who says we have to take seriously the intelligence reports that by 2030, Putin will feel able to attack NATO in Europe. He adds, however, we will likely see him coming. We knew that he was going to attack Ukraine because they were exercising. Of course, some of us remember that when people like me said this is really serious, these aren't exercises, he's getting ready to attack Ukraine, you had lots of people, lots of former British diplomats were wheeled out saying, oh, this is just a skirmish and no, nothing's going to happen. So I think we will see it. We're already seeing a build-up of Russian forces in the high north, in the Arctic. So we are seeing. But the other thing is there could be a mistake. That is a miscalculation, because when Putin sees us weak, when he sees that at the moment we certainly don't have the defenses, yes, there's lots of talk about all the stuff we're going to build, but it takes years to build these things. So if you were Putin and you wanted to attack, when would you do it?
Now.
Would you wait until... So you've answered the question. That's it.
Yeah.
So this again is why there's a real and present danger. The things we could do, some form of conscription, some form of air defense, these are things that we could get cracking on right now to show our resolve and would not cost a lot of money. But we're not doing it. And so this is actually a very dangerous time for us, more dangerous than it might be in 2030. And he might make a slip. Along the Baltic, the opportunities for a real error which would bring into collision a Russian jet and a NATO jet, that is very, very likely. So what we want from this NATO summit is some hard talk and the presentation of a hard face towards Russia. The last thing we want is a preening, posturing American president thinking more about glitz and gold and his Mount Rushmore and having his face there and all the money he and his family are making whilst he's president. That's what his focus is on. It's not on keeping the idea of the West, the Western world, America and us safe. It's appalling, Petrie.
Yeah, it certainly is shocking. Good to talk to you, though. It's always such a pleasure. Professor Anthony Cleese there, Security and Intelligence Studies Professor at Buckingham University. Just a quick reminder that at the top of the hour, John Boothman will be joining us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. Now, we know that Nigel Farage has resigned as MP for Clacton to contest his own seat in a by-election following funding investigations. Well, constitutionally, MPs cannot simply resign. Farage must be appointed to a historical Crown sinecure, such as the steward of the Chiltern Hundreds. It's all very constitutional. It's all, we know nothing is simple in our constitution in terms of politics, which then legally vacates his seat. Parliamentary writ will then be issued to trigger the by-election. The tactical move mirrors Douglas Carswell in 2014, who resigned and stood again in Clacton, and David Davies in 2008 over civil liberties. But do these things ever work? And what is the process now? Well, joining us to discuss this further is Dr. Craig Prescott, who's a constitutional law expert from Royal Holloway University of London. It's good to see you again. Thank you for joining me. So, this has kicked up a lot of constitutional steps that are going to have to happen. Tell me what happens next.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So he's announced that he's going to resign. As you said, he can't just resign. That what has to happen is that he has to be appointed to one of those two positions, the Chiltern Hundreds or the Manor of Northstead. And then what that triggers is the writ for the by-election, which has to be moved in the House of Commons. Normally that's done by the relevant party whip, so it would be the Reform Party whip who moves in the House of Commons a motion for the writ to be issued that then triggers the by-election normally in a few weeks' time, so that the date for the by-election would be set then.
But it can be denied though, can't it?
In theory, it's sort of like we have this slightly farcical process, and we've sort of lingered with it. It's over 400 years old now, this process, and we've lingered with it because it's sort of automatic. Everyone just puts this through on the nod. It would be really unprecedented for the Commons to vote against this motion or to amend it in some way, or for Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, who officially makes the appointment to the Chiltern Hundreds or the Manor of Northstead, not to make the appointment. Because typically the political parties on these types of issues have like a pact that we won't play around with this and you won't play around with this, effectively.
But it could be. I mean, it's unlikely to be, but there is room in there for it to be denied.
There is theoretically room for it to be denied, yes. It's sort of dependent on everyone doing the job that, they're expected of doing. But the politics of this is unusual.
It's very unusual.
And this, like you talked about David Davis sort of standing down to fight a by-election on civil liberties, sort of, relating to terrorism legislation and what have you. And then Douglas Carswell set an interesting precedent of he defected from the Conservatives to UKIP, as it was then. Yeah. And, and he sort of had written about this in the past, that sort of he was interested in ideas of democracy. And one thing he sort of advocated for was if you switch parties in between a general election, then you should call a by-election and allow your constituents effectively to approve your shift. Yeah. And so having sort of advocated for that, when he did it, he couldn't not do it. But that hasn't happened with other Reform MPs. Those recent...
No, it doesn't really happen at all now, does it? They just either go as an independent or put another label on themselves. The other question that I had for you constitutionally is that Reform has offered to pay for the by-election. It's around about £230,000 at last count is what a by-election costs. But it's not possible for them to do that, is it?
No, fundamentally, local elections are administered. Well, by-elections administered by the
Central
local
government,
council.
yeah.
And you wouldn't want, like fundamentally, for a political party taking part in a by-election to pay for it.
No.
You know, the whole idea of an election is that it is an impartial process, and that's why it's run like by the local council, sort of, not by the political parties themselves. So that's a non-starter as an idea.
So they can't pay for it for obvious reasons, which I completely accept. And of course, this doesn't. If this election goes ahead, I mean, at the moment he's only being contested by Count Binface. But if Count Binface pulled out, what happens then? Does he automatically win? Does the by-election go ahead? What happens?
He would be returned as the only candidate, and it would be an uncontested election. You know, there are precedents for that in the past, but we've got to go several decades at least for something like that. But, you know, that could theoretically happen if there's only one candidate and they're validly nominated and meet all the requirements, then they become the MP.
And the other thing that is interesting in this case for this by-election is that, of course, this could be one of two by-elections in the same place in short shrift. Has that ever happened before?
I can't think of another precedent, sort of where you've had potentially two by-elections in quick succession. And of course, the issue here is, you know, there's that investigation from the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. You know, that would be suspended during the by-election. If he comes back as the MP and they find that he's committed an offence and has breached the code of conduct for whatever reason, and suspend him for 10 days or longer, it triggers a recall petition that could lead to another by-election happening pretty quickly after this one. And indeed, that's the reason that the other parties have given for not fielding a candidate, that it would be, in a sense, better to let the Parliamentary Commissioner go through his investigation and then see where we are. If he gets a suspension for 10 days or more, you end up with a by-election and you can just fight it then. In a sense, Farage is trying to jump the gun in some ways.
But it doesn't stop the processes from happening. That's why I'm a bit confused as to why he's done it, because it doesn't stop that inquiry.
No, it's sort of the most that could happen is that it's put on pause whilst he's not an MP, and then when he becomes an MP again, if he does, then it starts again. So, the tactics of this seem quite confused from a political perspective. That no one will thank him for having two by-elections in quick succession.
Well, and also, like we said, the cost of that will be £500,000, which you know, at the moment, that seems to be an enormous amount of money that could be better spent elsewhere.
Well, yes, fundamentally, it's it's and reforms. One of Reform's main campaign planks is that there's a lot of waste in the public sector, and you know, so this is. I think this has backfired on him already in that sense. Whether he appreciated that it wouldn't stop the investigation, I don't know. Maybe he didn't anticipate the other political parties not sort of rising to this occasion and you know, taking a different approach to perhaps what he anticipated.
It's extraordinary, but I bet it's making your lectures really interesting at the moment, and those essays that have to be written explaining it. Dr. Craig Prescott, thank you very much indeed, constitutional law expert from Royal Holloway University of London. Coming up, we're going to be going through the papers. I wonder what will be on the front pages.
For over 20 years now, I have been subject to constant demonisation by the press for daring to be outside the consensual view on many issues, I've been attacked again and again. And I am the most physically and verbally attacked public figure or politician of modern times. Yes, you will know of some of the incidents: milkshakes thrown in my face, placards bashed over my head. But let me promise you, you only know about a fraction of the number of times that I've been assaulted. It would seem from the last couple of years, from the way I've been treated, that the press would rather our members of Parliament had no assets and no wealth at all. They seem to fundamentally object to any MP that has outside income. Indeed, they view those that have continuing business interests with severe scepticism. Making money is not a crime. Let me be absolutely clear. After the furore and the media pile-on, well, not just the media, the other political parties too, let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And you know, for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero. I thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which should happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's good to have your company. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. And coming up in an hour's time, it's your chance to talk back. And we're going to be talking about Nigel Farage again, because he did something extraordinary today. He announced his resignation as an MP, only to stand again for the position of MP at Clacton in a by-election. And he's saying that this is, you know, man against the establishment, basically. This is him against the establishment, and he will let the people of Clacton decide as to whether he did anything wrong or not, which is an extraordinary thing to say, because as we know by now, that this action of his is not going to stop the parliamentary inquiry into his donors and why he got the money that he got. All it does is delay it until he's voted back as being an MP, unless the plan is not to be voted back as an MP, and then the inquiry will probably die. I don't know, but why would he want that? So it's really strange, but it looks like at the moment it's going to be a very lonely by-election. None of the other major parties are going to stand against him. It seems that only Count Binface and potentially Carol Vorderman, oddly, could be standing against Nigel Farage at that by-election, which will be a humiliation for him. Even if he wins, it is a hollow victory. So did he not see this coming? Did he not anticipate this, that no one would stand against him? Did he not know that the parliamentary inquiry into his donors would continue once he was MP again? I don't know. Is he playing a very clever game? Is this really what he says it is? Is this his battle against the establishment? Do you support him in doing this? Do you think that this is a stroke of genius on his part? Or do you think this is really just an angry man who is trying to distract from what's going on? It seems already to have backfired, unless this is what he wanted, which I can't imagine. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think about all of this. Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. I guess this will fall into two camps. I guess this will fall into the camp of those of you who support Nigel Farage and whatever he does, because you think he's the right man to run the country. So you will support this and think this is a good idea, that this is going to silence his critics, that somehow this is going to play in his favour. Or it'll fall into other hands where people will say, this is just a dumb, weird move. This is a strange thing to do. Either way, I want to hear your voices. That's what this is all about, this programme. It's for you to be able to say what you want within the realms of the law. And we have a decent chat about it. So do pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000. Well, here with me to discuss this and the papers, which I think is going to be the same thing, as far as I can see, is the fabulous John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, just when we thought it was going to be a quiet summer, Andy Burnham to the left, this by-election to the right.
Look, it's great business for journalists who, in the summer, when the Parliament starts to go into recess and things start to calm down, you think, well, it's going to be quieter. We'll be looking for strange and wonderful and exotic stories that normally you wouldn't touch with a barge pole.
Yeah, true.
And along comes Andy Burnham and then Nigel Farage afterwards. I mean, you were right to describe what happened today as extraordinary. But I think you're also right to be asking the question, is it wise? And I think that's where I think a whole load of people will be. I think some people will consider it maybe on the back of the Burnham stuff, which worked for Burnham. Maybe Farage thought this was a good idea, but is it a wizard wheeze too far?
I just can't get my head around it. It seems like a weird thing to do, because I don't know what he's trying to achieve.
I think you're right in that. I think, you know, to characterise this as a by-election of Nigel Farage against the establishment and the people who are going to decide who is right between the two are the people of Clacton is kind of really a bit strange. We already know what the people of Clacton think of Nigel Farage. They voted for him at the general election.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's, even if there was going to be a contest with all the other parties involved, the jury, for want of a better description, that he's chosen would seem a kind of strange one, given the fact that, in a sense, that his bluff's been called by the other parties, and most of them already saying that they're not going to play his game, they're not going to fall into his trap. It all looks a bit hollow. As you say, you could end up with Carol Vorderman and Count Binface. You'll remember, of course, back in 2008, and again, I remember this from the time David Davis choosing to have a by-election in Halton Price over... It was all about civil liberties and the government introducing legislation to increase the amount of time people could be held in detention for terrorist offences and serious offences. And he went to the people of that constituency, and he won 71% of the vote, that only the Greens and the English Democrats stood against him. But again, it was a kind of pretty hollow thing, and it didn't make any difference to that legislation.
No.
Of course, David Davis is still there, we should remember, as an MP, and, you know, during the period afterwards, you know, was part of Conservative cabinets. He was famously, of course, the Brexit minister at one time as well. But you know, back to Farage, it does seem a bit odd, and his justification today was, I think, to say the least, a bit rambling. condemning some tactics by newspaper, broadcasters, which has been, I think, quite comprehensively debunked over the course of the evening by a variety of journalists. And you get a thing these days with politicians who complain a lot about their treatment at the hands of the press, and I think it sometimes just comes across as, well, basically politicians not wanting to be scrutinised. At the end of the day, hats off to the Sunday Times and the Times for the work they've done in this story, in particular Gabriel Pogran, the story at the weekend about Cottrell, George. His Farage's pal, and then the other story, of course, which will be the basis of the parliamentary standards investigation about, the 5 million quid being a gift. These stories are legitimate stories. These stories are stories that are in the public interest to actually undertake and investigate. And, if Nigel Farage really wants to be, as he does, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, then, like any other person standing for any of these roles, he needs to be scrutinised. He needs to be able to answer questions about these matters. And to resort at the end of the day to name-calling of journalists. It came as a great surprise to me, at the weekend to discover that the Sunday Times was a Labour paper.
Yes, that is quite a shock.
There's stuff getting thrown out today by Farage. He instanced stuff about the Sky News approaching his daughter in his house, and for anybody who's seen the video, it looked like a kind of normal and actually very polite approach from a broadcaster.
Who then turned and walked away. And the reason they were there is because that was the last house that Farage had been registered to vote in, and so they turned up wanting to talk to Farage, and then they knocked on the door and the person there didn't want to engage, so they walked away. So it doesn't... it depends if what you call harassment, I suppose.
Yeah, well, tonight, Michael Crick, who is a biographer of Farage, pointing out that this house, he's been there and done interviews in it. This house, it's pretty well known that this was a house, that Farage was associated with. Well, all too often it is now the case, I think, and I've certainly seen some of this in Scotland, not just with Reform but other parties as well, is journalists get accused of harassing individuals and harassing politicians, in reality because the politicians concerned just don't like the things that are being said, written or broadcast about them.
And that's certainly been the case, hasn't it, that we've seen from very little from Nigel Farage, actually, but the last time we saw him doing the rounds was on the 10th anniversary of Brexit, and he was absolutely horrified that they didn't want to talk about the 10th anniversary of Brexit. They wanted to talk about the £5 million donation, and he seemed to be on very wobbly ground because he just became very aggressive. I've not seen him be like that before. Normally he's very well centred, he has a good argument, he always sort of keeps relatively calm, but we didn't see that from him the last few times he's been interviewed.
Look, he's the consummate professional. He's a great communicator.
Yeah,
this is one of the reasons that he gets the support that he does. I suppose the other side of a lot of this coin, and maybe if you look at it through the lens that he looks at these things through, is that, and I think this has been said by quite a few people, given the people who do vote for Nigel Farage and Reform, will this make any difference? Because he has his core base of support. They support him anyway through thick and thin.
Yeah.
They will believe. I don't know. Somebody had this great phrase that they told me. A politician at the after the Scottish elections. He said that the interesting thing about the electorate was that people were voting and mired in ghettos of their own prejudices, which sounds all very fanciful, but I got what he meant. And, you know, the people who vote for Farage will vote for him through thick and thin anyway. And will this make any difference to what they think about him afterwards? You know, again, you're into quite interesting territory. I heard you talking there with, you know, your previous interviewee about, you know, by-elections cost money. Typical by-election costs what, nearly £250,000 quid. In this case, as you've said earlier, you know, the parliamentary standards investigation would be suspended, but it doesn't go away. So Farage could possibly come back to Westminster. He then presumably there could be a verdict which finds against him, leading to yet another by-election. And, you know, so it goes on. So on the one hand, you know, it's fair to say that his own supporters will continue to support him and believe, you know, no doubt more fervently that what he said was right. And maybe a whole load of other people will take a different view.
What I find really interesting, though, John, in this upcoming election, all right, if you look at the win of Reform, and then you look at the combined votes that took, you know, other votes in Clacton, if there isn't the distraction of multiple parties, and we see these by-elections, right, the lists, I have to read them all the time, the lists go on and on and on and on, right, taking a few votes here, taking votes there. If it is just a competition between Nigel Farage and Count Bimface, right, all of those other votes will go to Count Bimface, not to anywhere else. So, I mean, this could be a really interesting...
It could. On the other hand, maybe people will just go, he's going to win anyway. This isn't really very important. It's a bit of a wheeze. And they might just not turn out. And, you know, you have to ask the question, how much attention is going to be paid by the national media to Nigel Farage standing in a by-election against two people who they would regard as also-rans? So
I still think the press is going to be fascinated by this, because if enough people don't want to vote for Farage, but want to cast a vote,
well, again,
it could be a disaster.
We need to wait and see. However, if I can use that David's example again, right? David Davis won, I think, in that by-election in 2008, 71% of the vote, and the Greens and the English Democrats, his two other opponents, I think got about 7.5% each. So that's where I think, you know, by calling his bluff by the other parties, they're maybe onto something there, and that it's more likely to kind of backfire in that direction. And again, as your interviewee pointed out earlier, you know, Farage and the Reform Party spend all their time talking about wasting public money.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, I heard Zia Youssef earlier, here's another wizard wheeze, Reform will pay for the by-election. I mean, is there ever a madder idea that somehow or other political parties should be paying for by-elections? We live in a democracy, for goodness sake.
I know, it's absolute madness, isn't it, to even suggest it?
Yeah, we've got a great expression in Scotland, which you probably have heard before, which is, when I heard that, I said to myself, do you think your head's button up the back? It's just kind of a bit outlandish. But this is the kind of political world that we now live in.
Yeah.
In the long term, though, you know, you're still talking about, you know, a very, very serious politician here. This might come off. Look, you know, it's got badly received so far, but, you know, Farage, he's one of these kind of guys. that, you know, he can disappear for a bit and come back.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
He's still got huge support. I think there's a bigger issue, though. I mean, I keep banging on about this, and I've been banging on about this on the back of the great row about money in the SNP, and I think we may have spoken about it before in recent weeks. The regulation of political parties, and particularly their finances, and also what kind of sanctions can be taken against politicians in relation to these matters, and I'm not wishing to cast particular aspersions on anybody in particular, although this is the context in which we are talking, is actually pretty poor now in Britain. You know, if something happens with any particular party and their finances that looks as if there's been some funny money or it's all been a bit odd, and in the past it's been the case where you've heard tales of the old parties, for want of a better description, being in receipt of these kind of things before. There's never any kind of real sanctions about it. People get slapped in the wrist.
I completely agree. I mean, it seems to me to be ridiculous that all of this donation stuff is just so lax, and so we're sort of heading towards an American style, of paying politicians to be a certain way, and that is not where. That's not where we need to be going. John, we've got to take a quick break, but let me remind you guys to give me a call on this. Do you think that Farage has pulled a blinder here? Do you think he's trying to distract? What do you make of this? Do you think it's a brave move, that it is him against the establishment? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me is John Boothman, political correspondent for the Sunday Times in Scotland. We'll start with the Times, your sister paper, and the front page: Labour and Tories won't fight Farage's fake contest. The Greens have now confirmed that neither will they. So this is where broadcasting gets slightly ahead of the print press, that the Greens have said, because there was some thought that they might at one point, but they're now not standing either. So this is looking like it may well have backfired.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's also an interesting paragraph there in that story saying that some Labour MPs may try and block his resignation until a full investigation of the £5 million by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner can take place. But given that, everybody's not standing, I think, that's unlikely to happen. But I don't know. Let's wait and see. I just thought that was a very interesting paragraph in the Times story.
Yeah, well, as I was talking to that constitutional doctor before I spoke to you, he was saying that it is possible to block it.
Yeah.
But it's never been done. So it would be really very unusual. But then so much is unusual today's politics that we just don't know. The other big story of today, which has slightly got lost, hasn't it, under the Farage glitz, is that Prince Harry and 6 other claimants have lost their $50 million High Court privacy case against the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. All the claims made by Harry, Sir Elton John, Baroness Lawrence of Clarendon and 4 other high-profile figures that newspaper articles had resulted from unlawful information gathering were dismissed in an emphatic ruling by the judge. I mean, Harry's saying this is a stitch-up, but
57 counts they lost on in that High Court case. 46 days it lasted, all about bugging and hacking and private detectives. 40 journalists, I think, gave evidence. The Daily Mail making a great deal of it. I saw Lord Dacre earlier in a very, very, very strong and coruscating criticism of Prince Harry and the others who'd taken this to court, talking about the heroic journalism of the Daily Mail, and basically going on to say that a lot of this was about bringing back Leveson and regulation of the press and making the press liable for a whole series of things in terms of costs, if they were going to be publishing controversial stories. So, yeah, I mean, I think, the expectation of this for some, certainly I was reading this morning that at least on some counts that the people like Prince Harry and Elton John and others who are going to court may have won in some courts, but it's been comprehensively thrown out by the judge. So that's a very interesting judgment today.
It's a very interesting judgment, and one that I think has shocked Prince Harry. I mean, yesterday there were reports that he was writing a victory speech to give out. And many of them would have thought that they would have won this, but Harry is saying it's a complete and obvious whitewash. And it's cost them a lot of money. It's cost tens of millions, this, hasn't it?
Yeah, and he's not had a lot of luck, Prince Harry, has he?
No.
In fact, he's barely got a place to stay when he comes into the United Kingdom anymore, if the stories are to be believed about Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, I know. That's where I always stay, obviously, when I'm in town. Yeah, it's an interesting one because he was over for the an Invictus Games meeting, which I think is one of the greatest things that any royal has ever done, frankly. So I really always support him on that. But obviously there was this High Court judgment as well. I wonder if they just leave it now, or it doesn't strike me as a sort of person that leaves things be. I think that we might see something else come out of this.
I think we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. But as you say today, I think a big surprise that the judgment was, one, as strong as it was, and two, really as comprehensive a victory for the Daily Mail, and not quite what a lot of people might have expected.
Absolutely. I mean, the judge was emphatic. He was saying it was disorganised, it wasn't coherent, there wasn't enough, the evidence wasn't as stable, all of those things. It really was a brutal takedown. Let's have a look at the Mirror, and the Mirror, Farage quit fiasco, desperate is the headline. Humiliation as main party's snub contest. Unnecessary by-election will cost 200,000. PM blast. He's up to his neck in sleaze. So this is it. This is why I don't understand what he thought would happen. I don't know what the end game is of this, and I don't like not knowing that.
Again, you know, we're going to have to see how this plays out. You know, I would still say that Farage is a character who, once he gets knocked down, and that's happened on a couple of occasions before, he immediately is able to bounce back up because he's now got that core of support. I think the thing, you know, going forward, though, that's still is starting to become a major problem for Farage and Reform in particular is whether or not, and this sometimes happens to third parties, we've seen it in the past before, their vote starts to peak. And I wonder whether we might have, for at least a bit, have seen peak Farage, and then
we
after
have seen
that,
the numbers fall back from around 32 to 26, haven't we? I mean, they're still ahead, but it has fallen back. And I've heard many commentators saying, yeah, we've seen peak Farage. I think you underestimate this man at your peril, which I think is what you're saying as well. And he has plenty of tricks up his sleeve. So
yeah, but he's also able to strike a populist chord.
Yeah.
He's able to tap into people's frustrations, and there's a lot of that, as we've said on many occasions before, about all of the political parties in the UK. I suppose part of the difficulty that he may face himself, and I think you can see maybe some of this round about Rupert Lowe and Restore, is, you know, with Farage, maybe like the other parties, familiarity starts to breed a bit of contempt. You know, I certainly have seen over the course of the past few months in the Scottish elections and some by-elections before, people starting to organise and get a sense of how to vote against reform, like in tactical voting, for example. I would have expected, to be fair, during the recent Aberdeen South by-election, given that Farage and Richard Tice had spent some time in the North East over the past couple of years, they were certainly at the forefront, even before, I would argue, the Conservatives, of the whole drill baby drill thing, that they were unable to capitalise on it. I think they made, I suppose, a bit of a tactical mistake, even with their activists in Scotland telling them to go to Makerfield to that by-election and not to Aberdeen South. And I mean, as I said at the time, you know, who would ever have expected that the Conservatives in Scotland would win a by-election? I mean, you know, I've been around politics for a very long time, and it's just something that doesn't really happen.
yeah.
And it was about oil and gas, which should have been a very, very strong issue for Reform, given their, you know, no net zero, stupid net zero.
Yeah.
If I've heard Richard Tice say that once, I've heard him saying it a million times. Should have been something that was a vote winner for them, that they could have capitalised. So I just think, you know, that there is a bit of people starting to kind of get a measure of Reform, particularly their opponents, and you know, the Reform of split votes in constituencies in Scotland, but now their opponents are starting to get a bit of, wait a minute, if Farage and Reform look as if they're going to win, then we can work out how to tactically vote.
Yeah,
again.
they've not done well in by-elections. I mean, that is, you know, they've not achieved what they wanted to in by-elections. They have in councils, but not in by-elections. Let's take a break, John, before we come back and have a look at the rest of the front pages for Wednesday.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. Thank you for joining me and joining John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland as well. Unsurprising, The Guardian has gone with Nigel Farage as well. But this headline is Farage's £5 million gift reported over money laundering concerns. And I was saying that a bit earlier on, John, that you and I can't send each other more than £10,000 because it would be highlighted by money laundering laws, right? So this is how The Guardian got the story, was that it was a national crime agency that was alerted to a £5 million deposit in Nigel Farage's bank account. So that's how the story has got out.
Yeah, well, but reported to the National Crime Agency by bankers, the story said. So I think this is a very interesting revelation, given that The Guardian, you know, and it says in this story where, you know, all over the £5 million donation story in the first place. The Guardian were all over that story like a rash.
Yeah.
So, and a good different take on a day like today, saying that, you know, the National Crime Agency were looking at this. But all of this will all be grist in the mill for the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. You know, before we all get carried away, and to a certain extent maybe we have to been doing that already with the headlines in the paper, the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner hasn't reported yet.
Yeah, no, and it might not be until September.
Yeah.
But this is no different to any of us would have been reported by bankers. Because of the money laundering laws. That's why they're in place.
We've just had to, you know, my son's buying a flat, right, and there's a wee bit of a mortgage involved in it, and we've just had to fill in bits of paper about, you know, money getting transferred from here to there. Your bank is asking you for details of where that money
came from,
and,
why you've got it, all of that. I mean, I think
I
think the money laundering thing is an absolute con, to be honest. I think it is just because they want to know what we're doing. But he's no different to either. If somebody deposited £5 million in my bank account, anyone, please? Then I would be reported. The bankers would report me to the National Crime Agency, and they'd come knocking on my door and say, where did you get this money from and why? So
absolutely. Yeah,
we would all be subject to that. The Daily Telegraph goes with, right at the top above the flag, is Harry humbled in court. That's not going to go down well. And the Daily Telegraph then goes, Farage gamble turns into a farce. Labour and Tories, and now we know Greens, will not fight contest triggered by reform. And this one, Burnham must raise taxes by £120 billion, John, to avoid a crisis. This is a warning from the OBR.
We're into the same old story, you know, and as we've said before, Prime Ministers may change, but the problems remain the same. You know, our welfare bill's too high, we've got an ageing population, all of the things that we like to spend money on, we keep spending even more money on, and some of the things that we need to spend money on, we keep spending less on. And the OBR pointing out that unless we can do something about this spending, either increasing taxes on the one hand or cutting spending, then we've got a huge problem coming not very far down the road.
It's just, you know, you look at the easy solution for any government is not to tackle the big stuff, but to tax us more. That's always the go-to easy solution. It's a quick fix. Just tax people more. They don't. Then they don't have to deal with anything. They don't have to cut anything. They don't have to actually, you know, put their big boy pants on and do something about the levels of spending that we've got.
Yeah, but taxing stuff as well, when your other main objective in order to try and put your finances in order is to achieve some kind of higher levels of economic growth, produces exactly the opposite result. We only need to look, for example, about, national insurance contributions and what happened when the government increased that in the last couple of years. And what, one of the things that is deeply disturbing over the past period, last few months even, is that we're starting to see things like unemployment creep up.
Yeah.
We hear all these numbers about, 1 million young people not in education or employment. And that number rising. We saw figures today about 100,000 people receiving benefits because they've got ADHD with no prospect of anybody going into employment. And politicians talk about it all the time and may even deplore it all the time,
they
but
don't do anything
are not
about
willing
it.
to do some of the things that...
Well, that's what I'm saying, is they've got to start putting their big boy and girl pants on and doing something about this that might not be very popular. I mean, it's not a popularity contest running the country, although that's what it's turned into.
Well, politicians will sometimes rather look for what they think is the easier solution or the less hard solution, right, as you've said.
Yeah, they do. The nibs at the bottom here are quite interesting. Pakistan set out demands to take the rapist. Now, this is the Rochdale grooming gang ringleader who is 73 years old and has just been released, and through some very convoluted means. We can't deport him back to Pakistan, not least of which he's been denied his British citizenship and he has denied himself his Pakistani citizenship. So we can't render somebody stateless, that's number one, and then there's all sorts of backdated reasons that he can't be deported. However, there are talks going on with Pakistan, but Pakistan have said that they're demanding extradition of political dissidents if Britain wants to secure the deportation of this grooming gang ringleader.
There's a wider issue here, right, which I think maybe should be a bit of a salutary lesson to all those people who say deport illegal immigrants, send them all back. It takes two to tango, right? And what I mean by that is that we may want to do some of these things, but the places that you want to send them back to might not want to play that game. So we are seeing in this case with one individual, the Pakistani government saying, if you want to send this person back, what do we get?
Yeah.
And that's the case in all of these matters. It's not, it sounds like an easy solution. Let's just deport X, Y, and Z, and in this case, this particular individual. But if the place you want to deport them to says, hey, hang on a minute, it doesn't quite work like that, then you've got a problem.
It's the same with turning the boats round and sending them back to France, isn't it? The other nib is thousands caught out by new 20-mile-an-hour speed zones. I mean, we're so used to them in London now, actually, I think. But these are in Wales as well. Labour-controlled Welsh government carried out a blanket reduction of 30 limit to 20 limit. And people are getting caught because you're used to 30, right? That's you feel what 30 feels like, you know what it sounds like, and suddenly you're down to 20, and it's all very different. So there's lots of money being raised by doing this.
Well, I have to say, if you get to the very end of that very small paragraph at the bottom of the Telegraph, it describes the decision of the Labour government in Wales as the worst decision since devolution. And given that the Labour Party in Wales had the worst election result, not since devolution, but I think in more than about a century, back on May the 6th at the Senate elections, I think this particular decision might have had something to do with it. I mean, there's other issues attached to this as well. You know, you say that it raises lots of money. Of course it does, right? On the other hand, it slows down traffic. I don't know. I think the benefits in terms of the number of accidents, I don't know. I don't think the numbers are that large, right, in terms of the benefits. But look, I could be wrong in that. But it just means, and I know this might sound a bit naive or something, or blunt or something, or obvious or something, that things take longer to do. It takes longer for people to get to their work, right? Public transport gets held up. And again, you know, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm open to be contradicted in this. Maybe lots of more lives are saved, or lots.
It does reduce accidents a bit, but I don't know what how you would measure that against the obvious things that you've just been mentioning there about it taking people longer. I mean, look, in London, 20 is the dream. Right, if you can get as fast as 20, it's a good day in London. So I suppose it's not that. The only time it's really annoying is when I'm going home at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, oh, for goodness sake, come on, this is crazy. There's literally nobody around. But that's the way it's going, isn't it? And it's better for air, it's better for all of those things as well, so we've got to get used to it. I love the Mac cartoon, John. I don't know if you've seen this. It's Wimbledon, and the umpire saying, President Trump has just informed me that the American player did not double fault.
So that's the same president that didn't know what a red card is,
Yeah. Apparently the guys were just telling me in the control room that President Trump, apparently when he was told about the win, the Belgian win against America, he said, oh, well, never mind, maybe next year. This is this is a man who knows about football, apparently. Right, let's take a quick break. John, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here, and with me is the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, The Sun, the only reason I wanted to look at this because the headline is rather brilliant. Harry caned. Come on. That's clever, isn't it? I mean, at the moment with the World Cup going on, but this is about Prince Harry being defeated in court. So I just wanted to read that headline, really.
My favourite World Cup headline of the day, well, wasn't a headline, was somebody was describing tonight's match, which I think is in the middle of a penalty shootout, Colombia versus Switzerland, as Charlie versus the Chocolate Factory, which I thought was pretty clever myself.
That is very clever. Yeah, that is very clever. There's some good ones going around, actually.
Yeah.
The I paper, that again, Farage quits and gambles his future on new by-election amid investigation into the 5 million crypto gift. And at the top there, 35 degrees Celsius tomorrow as heat spreads across the UK. I've just checked my weather report for tomorrow for Shepherd's Bush, and it's 32. What's it like for you up in Scotland?
Nothing like that. I mean, actually, the weather's been pretty. But look, you know, for people, look, the weather's been pretty good here. There's been the odd shower, but I mean, I don't know how you guys. I was going to ask, right? How are you guys coping with the weather? We are not having, you know, this kind of mad weather in that respect that you're certainly having. I noticed that a lot of the papers today have got all sorts of guides and advice about how people should sleep at night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sleeping fine actually. I've got no problem. I've still got my duvet on, but that's because I have a basement, my bedroom. So it's like it's so cool there. I'm really lucky, and I have a you know, even if it's really hot, and I've got concrete floors. So for the dogs, you know, they just lie on the concrete floors, and I'm now, because of Yana, my vision mixer, she taught me how to make lollipops for the dogs. So they now get a nice lollipop of an evening just before I go out to work. So we're finding a way around it. We're dealing with it, but a lot of people are not as lucky, and are having a horrible time sleeping and trying to. I mean, in my old place, it would have been a disaster. I would have been sweltering.
I mean, look, I think, you know, if anywhere, I mean, literally anywhere over the border seems to be hitting 30 and beyond.
Yeah.
And again, you know, most of the papers are talking about what the third heat wave to come over the next few days.
Yeah.
But sorry, we don't do that kind of weather here.
No, and it's cruel to those of us Celts that are down here. Because I mean, you know, I've got the blue eyes, dark hair, and very pale skin, so I'm Celt through and through. So it's very it's not good, the sun. As soon as I go out in it, it's not a good thing. The Daily Star hacked off. Harry, Elton and 5 others lose huge privacy case. So it's basically it's two stories, isn't it, for the papers? It's Harry or it's Farage. The Daily Express, let the people be the judges of my actions. That seems to be such a naive statement from such a, you know, an intelligent bloke.
I agree. I still think, you know, I'm not really sure. I think they've looked at the bounce that Burnham got in the by-election,
maybe.
and they thought he needs to get back into the headlines, notwithstanding there are some very, very, very serious issues around, you know, both the 5 million quid and the recent revelations in the Sunday Times about George Cottrell, and somehow or other, you know, you can deflect attention away from that. It's everybody else's fault. It's not not for everybody's been really, really unfair and horrible and nasty and biased. Let's, take the story off in a different direction. And I don't know, as I say, whether that's either wise or been very well thought through.
No, it doesn't seem like it's going to pay off at all, whatever the plan was, which I still can't fathom. The Daily Mail, of course, their front page is about themselves. This was nothing less than a conspiracy to destroy the Daily Mail, that's Stephen Glover has written, vindicated in a 46-day High Court case costing over £50 million. 7 claimants, including Prince Harry, Baroness Lawrence and Elton John, accused the Mail of 57 counts of illegal information gathering. Over 40 of our journalists defended themselves in the witness box, and yesterday, meaning today, or Tuesday, a landmark ruling, one of Britain's top judges rejected every single allegation. So they've got pages and pages and pages inside the paper showing they can now give out all the information they've been holding on to for this case.
And then, look, an interesting editorial judgment. It's a distinctive and a different front page. Not everybody's particularly interested in Nigel Farage. They might be more interested in reading about Prince Harry, who, it's pretty rough, that picture they're using of him as well. He looks much older than I can certainly recall him, even in recent times in that photograph there. But very, very striking, hard-hitting Daily Mail front page, defending, of course, themselves.
Yeah, and I guess they were bound to do that. Although, again, how many people are interested in a court case? Many people have a very low opinion of us lot anyway, don't they? Of journalists, especially since Leveson. The FT has gone for half the page, being on Farage. Gambit falls flat, after rivals refused to contest the fake by-election. Reform leader denies any wrongdoing, bid to forestall funds inquiry, and a vanity project dismissed. So I don't know that it's going the way he thought it would.
Look, there's also a thing, we know this, and we know this from lots of experience. People don't like unnecessary by-elections.
No.
It's a chore for many people to turn up in elections at all, even though elections happen, certainly on a biannual basis in Britain at whatever level. So for a by-election to come along in a situation like this, you wonder, particularly if there's only going to be a couple of marginal candidates, and what the turnout is likely to be as well. I mean, again, it's worth throwing this in because this might happen later on. Let's say he wins the by-election and he's returned, and let's say the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner does report against him, and we end up having like a recall and the possibility of another by-election. I can remember one pretty famous case, because there's only been, in terms of recall elections, it's certainly, I think, less than 10 in the UK since that legislation was passed, that Ian Paisley Jr. Ian Paisley Jr. won the recall ballot in his constituency when most other cases where there's been those recall ballots, the people at the sharp end of it have lost. I can recall what there's been one in Scotland, Margaret Ferrier, the SNP MP, who basically had coronavirus and was travelling up and down to London.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
So she lost the recall ballot, and there was a by-election in the Rutherglen constituency. That would be, I think, 2023, before the general election, and Labour won the by-election quite comprehensively.
Yeah, I mean, I just... it'll be. I'm like you. I'm interested to see how how this will play out. I really am fascinated to see where we go from here. One thing I do want to ask you, John, I know you were a fan of Scotland and you were following the Scotland. Are you now backing England? No. You can't get a Scot to back
Very
England.
difficult question.
I'm half Scottish, half English, so I can pick and choose.
I don't know if you saw it. It certainly got great airplay in Scotland. There was a great Paddy Power betting advert the other day with Graham Souness, Gordon Strachan and Charlie Nicholas, formerly of Celtic and Arsenal and broadcasting fame, dressed up in Mexican gear. And
we had Talk Sport dressed up in Mexican gear the other day. John, good to see you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, but it's wonderful to see you. John Boothman there with the papers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Petrie here with you, and I'm with you for the next hour. And of course, this is your chance to talk back, because it's a full hour now, no guests, just you and me. And Farage is on the menu again this morning. This time, though, about his decision to quit as an MP, which he announced this afternoon at about 2:15. And I know, because I had to wake up from my afternoon nap to listen to him. And I thought it was a very interesting speech, a very angry speech. I don't know if you heard it, I don't know if you saw it. But also some of the words that were chosen were very interesting, I thought, because he declared that he had not broken any laws. And he hasn't, right? Providing that money is legal, providing he wasn't laundering it, which there's no suggestion, of course, that he was, that he hasn't broken any laws. It's perfectly fine to be given £5 million by a friend. I'd love a friend like that, please. Thank you very much. But he chose to use the word law instead of rule, and I thought that was interesting, because he is a smart cookie, right? And he would have spoken to lawyers. There would have been lawyers looking at his speech before he went and delivered it. But What was interesting, though, is the anger that he's clearly feeling. And is he angry because of the press intrusion, or is he angry because he's being scrutinised? And the scrutiny is getting... Well, it's getting hot, isn't it? I mean, there's going to be more and more of it. We've just seen the George Cottrell story come out at the weekend, and before that there was the Christopher Harborne 5 million that he's now being, or was being investigated over for breaking parliamentary rules. He also said in his speech that it seems that we don't like our MPs working other jobs. Well, I mean, that has been a debate for decades. I mean, for as long as I can remember, it's been should MPs have second jobs, etc., etc. Right? That's been knocking around for a long time. I don't think anybody minds MP. Well, that's down to the constituents, isn't it, to mind whether Farage has been working in other places and not looking after his constituents. If that's the case, then it's between them and him and them. It's not for us to comment, really. But nobody minds you working for money. That wasn't the point. So I was intrigued by that as a statement. I have no problem about the money he got from talking about guilt or gold or whatever it was he was doing. So what? Good on him. I don't have a problem. But it's not following the rules on a huge donation from somebody, and that is all it was. If it had been declared, there would be no story. There really wouldn't be. Nobody would be the least bit interested in it, because it would have been on his declaration. We would have all seen it. We would have all known that it was there, and we would have all gone, OK, well, we'll just watch out now to see if he brings in any policies on crypto that we weren't expecting, and leave it there. So it's not the fact that he got the money, it's the fact that it wasn't declared. And should it have been declared? And that will be a question that is answered by the parliamentary committee that was looking into it, the Standards Committee. They will decide whether it should have been declared or not. And that's all there is to this. But this seems to be, it feels like an overreaction. I don't understand what the end game is for this. I mean, Nigel Farage has stated that this is to let the people of Clacton be the judge as to whether he's done anything wrong or not. However, that doesn't stop an inquiry. It halts it for now. But should he be returned to Parliament as an MP, the inquiry starts up again. So it's weird to me. I don't know what the thinking... I wish I could figure out what the thinking was. You know, would this be a distraction? Would this be him being able to get hold of the narrative? Is this... Because it doesn't do anything apart from delay this inquiry. So I'm confused as to why. I'm hoping you can help me out with that. And also, if he gets returned, which he probably will. I mean, it's just him and Count Binface, right, for today, that is going to be standing in that by-election. And he wins, then he might get suspended, and then it becomes another by-election. So 2 by-elections at the cost of £500,000, £500,000. It's just, I don't know. It's an odd thing. Rick has said, is there a chance that Farage believes that not enough constituents will sign a recall petition even if the Standards Committee finds against him? I suppose that's possible, Rick, because it has to be 10%, doesn't it, of constituents in order for there to be a by-election. But 10% is quite a low bar. It's possible. It's a good point. And it's not a given that if he's suspended for more than 10 days that there will be a by-election for that reason. So it was good for you to point that out. Thank you, Rick. But it is interesting nonetheless. I don't understand it. I think it's a weird decision, maybe born of anger, maybe to delay scrutiny. I just don't get it. I don't get it, but I'd like to know what you think about it also. Do give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you back, so don't worry about that. And you can text as well your message, put the word talk, and then your message to 87222. Right, let me go first of all to Mark in Nottingham. First time caller, Mark.
Yes, indeed.
Well, it's lovely to meet you. Thank you for calling in. What do you make of all of this?
I find it very strange that every other party has now decided not to compete the by-election. They are acting in concert at the very least.
I agree. Are you still there, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do. So, but that's a strategy they've decided, isn't it? That they're just not going to get involved in this in case there is another by-election, in which case they would have to stand. I mean, Robert Jenrick's saying they're just too cowardly to put somebody up in this by-election. Do you believe that's the case?
I believe they're trying to postpone the timeline to give them time to prepare, and they want to do it on their terms. Now, as I understand it, and I listened to your show last night as well, they are... everyone knows where the money came from, the 5 million, and everyone knows it was an unconditional gift. Now, I also think what I understand also came out on your show last night was the same gentleman has given Reform 12 million as a political donation.
Yeah.
Right? So there is obviously a differentiation between a political donation and a personal gift, unconditional gift. And if it's unconditional, then he has no recourse to recovery of that money, 5 million, and he cannot direct where it is spent.
Correct.
Yeah. So the Standards Committee is going to say, is being asked to decide whether this was a personal gift or a political donation. Well, there is evidence that that is already being differentiated by the same donor, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, no, and I take your point that he's said, right, I'm going to give 12 million to the party and I'm going to give 5 million to you. But personal gifts, in the rules, the personal gift, it's very specific, and it says that it's from your partner or family member. And if there's any doubt about the gift at all, just register it. Because if it had been registered, no one would be talking about it. I promise you, no one would care.
Right.
So it's the fact that it wasn't registered. And they will make the determination, I guess, as to whether there were conditions attached to it. Because we've got, Nigel Farage is saying it was unconditional. The donor is saying it was unconditional. But...
And I understand that's how it has been documented. And that Nigel is saying, it has been documented as an unconditional gift. Okay, let that play out.
Yeah.
Worst case, the committee can only facilitate a by-election.
Yeah.
And right now, everybody knows that the worst case here is that they're going to be asked to have a by-election, which Nigel Farage today said, okay, let's have the by-election and let's have the voters make that decision. Now, if the other parties do not want to participate, that is their decision. He's saying, I will take the worst possible sanction because no one is saying I am wrong in taking the money. I've not broken any law.
No laws at all.
Yeah. So if I've not broken any laws, I've taken the money. Worst case is I, Nigel Farage, thought this was a personal donation.
Yeah. I mean, if he just went, oh, look, I messed up. I genuinely didn't think it needed to be registered. I genuinely didn't think that the George Cotterell stuff needed to be registered. But it is the both George and Christopher Harborne are both into cryptocurrency. I don't know I mean, these are all the things that need to be examined, right? And if there was any undue influence bought with that 5 million, or with the money that George Cotterell has gifted him. So it's just about keeping politics clean, or as clean as possible, and not allowing, vast personal gifts to have any sway on your political life.
I agree with you, Petrie. But de facto, everybody knows where this money came from now.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, were you in a position to exercise that influence at the time you received it? The answer is no. He wasn't even a leader of reform at the time. He wasn't, he subsequently became a parliamentarian. But he had to compete in Clacton for that. Mm-hmm. There was no guarantee that he was even going to become a member of parliament. I mean, Ben Habib did not become a member of parliament when he ran for reform. And he's and he's certainly not prime minister. He's not in government. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then you have to assess whether, okay, do we want the Bank of England to be involved in crypto? Yeah. Should we all be aware that he received the 5 million? Yes, I think we should. But we are now all aware. So what is the issue going forward?
Well, I suppose the issue going forward is just to make sure that this didn't buy any undue influence. And I know you said, look, at the time, but, Nigel Farage was certainly on his way, and with George Cotterell, the money from there as well was helping him rebuild his online presence and all of those things. So it may have been a means to an end, but these are the things the inquiry will look at and say, well, OK, no, fair enough. But in future, can you please register your interests? And Nigel Farage has been sanctioned before for not registering things and not registering things on time.
Okay.
So it's about, there are rules, and even if you're a maverick and you're anti-establishment, you're still working for the establishment, and there are rules that need to be followed. And if he just followed it and erred on the side of caution, that's what the rules say. They say if you're absolutely 100% sure it's a gift from your wife, we don't care. You don't need to register it. Right. But if you're not sure, put it down and it's there.
I agree with you that we should be aware.
Yeah.
How are you going to know that any undue influence was purchased?
Because people could buy me to do anything for 5 million.
Sorry?
You could pay, I would do anything for 5 million. I mean, right. Of course it's going to buy influence, isn't it? Even if it's just access or...
No, I listened to your show last night, and it is access.
Yeah.
And the billionaire who was buying Starmer's clothes, he got
Access.
a pass.
Yes, he did.
He got access.
Yeah.
He got a pass to number 10.
Yeah, we were all livid
He was
about that.
sitting in on meetings.
Yeah.
What we need then is to be aware so that when discussion of crypto policy comes up, we are aware.
Exactly.
And we can think of these things.
Exactly that. Exactly that. That's all we're asking for, is that transparency. So when he starts talking about crypto, we can say, now, I wonder if that 5 million had anything to do with it, right? That's all it is. It's just so that we've got the full picture.
Whereas what is being done at the moment is he's being portrayed as having crooked relationships. There is undue influence today, when actually nothing, apart from the fact he hasn't breached it, which may be an honest mistake, you're going, okay, we're all aware of it.
Yeah.
What's the issue? And the worst sanction you can give is to have a by-election, which he's already offered up.
Yeah, but he's offering up a by-election without the full facts of the money in place. So that would still go ahead.
What do you mean by the full facts, Petrie?
Well, whatever the inquiry finds out, the stuff that you and I don't know. The stuff that that we have no knowledge of, the questions that Nigel Farage will have to answer, all of those bits and pieces that of the jigsaw puzzle that we don't have. We think we've got a full picture, but we might not have. So if the by-election goes ahead now without those facts in place, those facts will still come out, and they will still a process of triggering a by-election, whether he's had 2 or not, or 3. It won't do anything.
But Petrie, if he had registered this interest, what he would have registered is it came from Harborne. It was £5 million.
Yes, but he didn't register it, and that's what makes it look dodgy.
So what more information are you looking for?
I'm not heading up the inquiry. I don't know what they'll ask Nigel Farage. I don't know whether they will look into the meeting at the Bank of England, whether they will look at the speeches that Nigel Farage has given on crypto, whether they will look into other details of his what he's been doing in regards to cryptocurrency. You know, all of those things that we don't have at our fingertips will be looked into to see, even if he says, look, it was completely free money, no strings attached at all. He's saying that. He's bound to say that, right? So what that has to do, we have to examine that and then look at evidence to suggest, perhaps, that influence was bought. So those are the things we need to know.
Okay. All right. Can I ask you a question? Mm-hmm. How many million is a billion?
1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
So 1,000 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy's been a friend of Nigel Farage for a long while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he sits there and he's been supportive of him during the Brexit debate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I was sitting there going, actually, I would like to see a right of centre. I would like to see a right of centre party return to power. This guy needs security, whatever. I'm going to give him 5 million quid. Yeah? He's made sacrifices. I would want to know, can I, is that going to impact me? Can I survive on the other 995 million
that
I've got left? I think I might have to make economies, but I think I could probably survive.
You'll probably pull through, yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably pull through. Yeah, if I think he's the best chance of returning a right of centre party to power.
Yeah.
And
that is within your gift
sense.
to do. You can give as many people as much money as you want. It's not about giving the money. It's not even about receiving the money. It's about being transparent about the money.
Yes.
That's all it comes down to.
So my next question is then, okay, if you are saying that somebody involved in politics has cannot possibly have a differentiation between a party donation and a personal donation?
Yes, of course. Of course they can. But it is in the public interest to know if it truly did come, no strings attached. That's all everybody wants to know. And because it wasn't registered, it's a huge lump of money. It can look like something was trying to be hidden. And that's just as simple as that. And it was a National Crime Agency that got the information.
And I've heard Richard Tice on your channel tonight.
Yeah.
Talking about, well, where did the information come from?
National Crime Agency.
National Crime Agency reports to the Times, does it?
Well, listen, I don't know the contacts that people have got, right? But that's where it came from. And it was the bankers that handed that information on, just as they would on you and me. If we suddenly got money into our bank account, we would be questioned as to where it came from if it's more than £10,000. And that's what happened to Nigel Farage. A big lump sum of money arrived in his bank account, and the National Crime Agency was informed by the bankers, who have a duty to do so, and then how it got to the papers is between the National Crime Agency and whoever they talk to. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it almost doesn't matter.
Questions on money laundering, etc. If you buy a house, you have to demonstrate where the funds come from.
Absolutely.
That's all perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Would I expect it to end up in an...
Well, you probably wouldn't expect it to, Mark, any more than I would, because we're not Nigel Farage. We're not famous. You know, we're not, nobody cares. But we do care when it's politicians, because we need to ensure that our politicians are not being bought by wealthy donors. And it's just as simple as that. And I'm not suggesting he has been, but I'm saying that we have the right to know. And that's what this is about. And like I said before, if he just registered it, none of this would have happened. None of it. I would love to continue talking to you, Mark. It's an excellent call, but I am extremely late to a break. And these are the people who pay my wages. So I've got...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie. This is Talkback and it's your opportunity to do exactly that. And we are discussing Nigel Farage and this extraordinary decision of his yesterday to resign as an MP and trigger a by-election in which it appears only himself and Count Binface will be standing. These are strange times, aren't they? They really are. Could be Carol Vorderman as well. Could be. So that's possible. But we do know that Restore isn't going to, Tories are not going to, Labour aren't going to, Greens aren't going to, Lib Dems aren't going to, so nobody else is going to put up any challenges. So it could just be between Farage and Binface, which is embarrassing, because all the other parties are saying that they're not going to play into this circus, into this pantomime. Nigel Farage, on the other hand, is saying that he's doing this because he wants the people to decide whether he's done anything wrong. The only problem with that is that it doesn't alter anything, because if he wins that by-election, he then becomes an MP again, and the same rules apply. He will be, then the inquiry will continue. And that could, if he is found to have done anything wrong, and is sanctioned, they could also trigger another by-election. So it's a very strange situation, and I wonder if it's backfired on him. I wonder if he was anticipating at all that the other parties wouldn't stand. And Robert Jenrick's saying, oh, it's cowardice. It's not. It's chess. They're deliberately not standing because they want to see the outcome of this inquiry before they stand. So it won't stop that at all. So it's a bit of a weird decision, and I don't know if he saw that particular outcome or if he thought it would have some other reaction. I don't know. Gary has said, I do think Farage's latest stunt will backfire on him and his party, and it seems to be the case considering today's newspaper front pages. I've always thought Farage was a bit of a slippery snake. Imagine how slippery he'd be in power. 1 minute, I think we need to change up politics because the two big parties have failed us miserably. Yet on the other hand, I think better the devil you know. And that's from Gary in Glasgow. Well, it's certainly made politics more interesting, having reform in the pot. Sammy says, I kind of agree with him to a point. Doxing his daughter is without a doubt a step too far. However, the by-election does feel pantomimey. He was incredibly angry, which in a way feels refreshing and very human. That's from Sam in Lancashire. I don't know if we can say it was doxing. I mean, the photograph in the paper of the house is the house that is well known to be where Farage normally is. And the Sky said that they turned up there believing it, because it was the last registered address where Nigel Farage voted from. So they believed that he was there. So I'm not sure it's doxing. I'm not sure I would go that far. That's what he's saying it is. But I'm not sure that is actually 100% the case. And I'm not siding with other journalists. I'm just saying that I'm not convinced that is legitimately doxing. Although if it is, of course, it is not. It's not acceptable. Absolutely not acceptable. You leave his family out of it. That's fair. So I'm wondering what you think of this. Do let me know. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Debbie is in Lincolnshire. Good morning, Debbie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. You enjoying the weather or not?
I'm loving the weather, although I'd not be working in it, but just chilling out. But yeah.
It is nice, though, isn't it? I mean, it is a bit hot, but it's lovely.
Yeah.
My garden is just going wild.
Well, I just keep going to, we've got Badger's View, which is our new little bar shed, and yeah, we keep going out there, but yeah.
You've got a bar in your garden?
I have.
I'm jealous.
Well, my parents, they've been married 55 years this year, and they were away in Corfu, and when they came back, we were like, ta-da!
That is amazing. What are the opening hours? Are they, is it?
It's open all hours.
It's generous. Generous opening hours. Fantastic. I'm thrilled about that. Debbie, what do you think about this latest political pantomime, fiasco, whatever?
So I'm an interim chairman of a branch of Reform, and
Okay.
I was very worried today when I listened to Nigel's address, and I was like, oh my God, where's this going? And in a way, I sort of get it. I'm like, yeah, stand up and see if people are going to re-elect you. And why wouldn't they? Why would the people of Clacton lose faith in him? Because they voted him in before?
But that's almost why bother then, isn't it? Because he already has a mandate from the people of Clacton.
Completely agree with you. 100%.
It's a risk, isn't it?
I also agree with that. But it's like, do we care? I mean, I'm not being funny. No one's bought his suits, his glasses, his underwear. You know, that's what Lord Ali did, you know?
Yeah.
So who cares? Because if it's all right for Labour, it's all right for him.
No, but the difference is it was registered. That's the point. So we knew that Lord Ali had, so we could then examine that if anything looked to be in Lord Ali's favour. In fact, when it found out that he got a pass and was in meetings, there was absolute furore because even though it had been declared, it clearly bought him favour. So that's the issue here. It was declared.
So how long did it take Keir to pipe up and say, Lord Ali bought me my suit?
Well, it's not up to him to say what's on the register. It's up to people to read what's on the register. The fact that it was there meant that it was above board. I mean, none of us liked it. We all thought it was pretty tacky, right? We all thought it was pretty pathetic. And there was, rightfully, the public were furious about it, going, well, you don't need somebody to buy you suits, mate. But at least it was there, which is why he didn't get sanctioned, right? That's why there was no inquiry, because he had declared it.
So I do think, though, if anyone's getting any money that's going to benefit a party, organisation, however you want to perceive it, they should, you know, pipe up. But I do feel the reason why they're gunning for Nigel is because he's a threat.
I mean, you could be right. Look, I'm not going to take away from you that he is a threat to the establishment, but I do also think that if Kemi Badenoch, if we found out through the National Crime Agency that she had got £5 million in her bank account from some business owner or other, we would be expecting an inquiry into that as well. I don't think it's just because it's Nigel.
Oh, no, I do think, right, I completely agree with what you just said, but I do think it's because it's Nigel. They're just all really, really worried. So we have the two-party system, and now because Nigel's come back into the arena things, they're now worried. And so, therefore, let's blacken him. And I'm a great believer in, and I said this to my regional director today, I'm a great believer in, none of us have got a great past. You know, I'm a divorcee, is what I'm getting at, not a criminal past. There's always someone trying to find something on you, and this is the best thing to have a pop at Nigel about.
Well, I mean, look, if you're in the public eye, that is what happens, right? People try to find something on you. And he's a politician, which is even more important and deserves more scrutiny. In fact, we should be scrutinising all of our politicians all the blooming time, as far as I'm concerned, because these are the people who are making decisions on the rest of our lives, and often those decisions don't seem to favour us, right? So we need constant scrutiny on every single one of them, and particularly if there is money coming in, and this is what the inquiry will have to look at and just say, well, look, you know, we just need to know whether this has brought any influence. And if it has brought influence, like Lord Ali's money definitely brought him influence, right? 100%. But it was declared, and we were able to see that the money had bought influence. So, and that's why that all of those things now have been you know, dropped. The value has been dropped. Everything's got to be reported. Any gift you get, I'm not allowed gifts at all.
Yeah, but Petrie, it was only declared when it was raised.
No, it was declared beforehand.
Oh,
it was discovered on the parliamentary interests blah blah thingy. Because if it hadn't been declared, then Keir Starmer would be facing the same inquiry that Nigel Farage is facing. It's only because it wasn't declared that it's being looked into. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an inquiry. There would be no need for an inquiry because it would have been declared.
I just feel that it's, which is why I would never want to go into politics at this level. I just feel it's just any way we can take someone down because they're a threat. And I think that's quite sad. I just feel let everybody go out there. And this is why I wouldn't want to be on that sort of front of politics.
No, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near it, Debbie. Absolutely wouldn't want to be anywhere near it. And maybe there is a bit of this as well about you know, media. But you look at anybody, a pop star, an actor, the media eventually turn on them, don't they? It's until Poppy syndrome and knock them back down again. It's just Nigel Farage's turn, you know. Exactly. I think, yeah, and I don't agree with it either. But I do think
your listeners tonight, even yourself, and I could say myself, and like I say, I'm a divorcee, who has got a white of white background?
Me.
You have. I love you. I met you in person to give you a cuddle.
I am the Snow White of the real world. I promise you. No, I'm not. But no, I do. I know. I take your point, Debbie.
You've got a white of white background. Nobody has.
No. No, but we're not politicians, Debbie, making decisions for other people, and I do think that requires a different level of scrutiny.
Completely agree.
And I want to come to your pub. So I think having a bar in your back garden is a brilliant, brilliant idea. I'm going to do that. Debbie, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to take a break. Otherwise, I'd keep chatting to you all night. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and this is Talk Back, and I'm Petrie. This is a really interesting message that's come in from Jen. It says, I'm surprised nobody seems to be able to see what's happening here. Farage, in Jenny's view, is a grandiose narcissist. That's pretty obvious to many. But if you look at how narcissists cope with a dent to their ego, you see that this is all straight out of the playbook. They can't cope with being out of control of their assumed social status. And as he was at risk of losing his social standing, he's attempted to remedy this for himself. He simply put himself in control of his status. Rather than be told he's done wrong, he simply changed the subject. The topic now isn't if he's done something wrong, it's if he's loved. It's all becoming an ego trip. And by the way, a narcissist cannot compute themselves being wrong unless it's to play the victim of another person or people trying to bully or hurt them. So for what it's worth, I honestly believe he thinks he's in the right here purely because, like Trump, he cannot comprehend being wrong about anything. I certainly agree with that with Trump, I can tell you that. Joanna has said Nigel only finally had enough because his finances were being dragged out and they went to where his daughter lives, which was out of bounds. It wasn't legitimate because Sky knew Farage was in America because they met him at the airport. Rules say it's okay to have a financial gift from a friend or family member. He was gifted it sometime before he decided to run for office, and Nigel took legal advice on it, so it was okay. If it was £500, would it matter if it was a gift or only because it was 5 million? Well, 5 million buys you a lot of favours if you want. I mean, 50 quid wouldn't, would it? I wouldn't do much for 50 quid. I'd do quite a lot for 5 million. So is it the gift or the amount? 5 million to this particular man who is extremely rich is not a lot of money. Nothing has been given in return and no principles of Nigel's have changed. That's what the inquiry is to determine. That's all. That's all anybody wants. Dale Vince, however, gave 5 million to the Labour Party and he got a lucrative contract, and his Just Stop Oil seemed to go unchallenged until they threw paint on everything. Well, I don't know about that. But yeah, look, I just... the rules do say that, absolutely. But we have a right to scrutinise it. That's all it is. It's just asking questions. And if you've got... what is it we always say, or people always say to me, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. If he's got nothing to hide, then why be like this about it? I mean, it just says, look, it's all above board. Here you go, check it out, and we all move on. It's as simple as that. Be great. Joe is in Brighton, another new caller. Hello, Joe. Good morning.
Hi, Petrie. I used to listen to you on another station.
Did you?
I hope your son is okay. Yeah, I remember something.
Yes, no, my boy, he's 29 now. Yeah, but he's doing really well, thank you, Joe.
What I want to say is the American congressman, Nigel Farage, why are you always in America putting down your own country? To me, it's clear and simple. He entered politics to enrich himself like Donald Trump. And it's clear he's taken money from Meta and Facebook. It's clear that it's footballification of parties that no matter what you say about him, it's the establishment. He is the establishment. He goes to all the private members' clubs. He only goes to a pub as a facade. And it's clear and simple that any other politician did what he's done would be clearly harassed by the Daily Mail and every other paper. So to me, we've already seen what's happened under the Republicans. If you watch Sicko, the Secretary of Health was regulating the healthcare industry. Once he quit politics to then become a CEO of one of the healthcare companies who tried to get into Britain under Cameron, and Cameron couldn't push it through. So what we're seeing already with reform councils, that they're closing care homes down. And this is what the Conservatives done in Bournemouth, which was a big private care home business. They changed it into private, and half those owners now are from Scandinavia. Most of the vets are now owned by Scandinavian and German companies, and the same with all our dentists. So what we're seeing with Nigel Farage, he's already said 3 times he will privatise the NHS. Do people understand who are voting for him that in America you can pay $20,000 to $30,000 for a pregnancy, £8,000 for an ambulance to pick you up? I don't think they know what they're voting for, because many people came back and said, I didn't realise I was going to lose all these rights
Indeed, certainly in America, absolutely right. But a lot of people, if you read what reform says about the NHS, although Nigel Farage has said that he doesn't think this system works, he's talking about an insurance model. But what that opens the door to is an American model, and a lot of people say no, he doesn't mean to privatise it. He's just saying that there'll be a two-tier system, whatever. But that opens the door to a private system, and also with policing and things like that. He's been very open about it. He thinks that a lot of these things should be private.
And you know why? Because like the former, what's her name? Priti Patel, they've been going to CPAC conferences for years, getting conservative ideas from the American corporations. We know that rap music was pushed, like gangster rap was pushed by the private prison companies giving shares to the record label. So that's why we went from party rap like Houdini and Run DMC to all of a sudden gangster rap, because they knew they could make money from incarceration and give shares to all the record labels. So all that's come out now. So what you're seeing with Nigel Farage, as the congressman said to him last year, you're here to influence getting help money from American companies. So he wants to incorporate all the interests of American companies to take over everything we own, and haven't learned nothing from Margaret Thatcher, because you must remember, do you remember ICL Digital, the big company, Digital? It got sold to Fujitsu. And all our companies got sold off to Japan. If you go to Bournemouth and Poole, there were companies who were like top companies in marine engineering. They all got sold off to Japan because Margaret Thatcher didn't stop the sale.
Yeah, but there'll be a lot of people listening to this and saying, well, you know, you don't know that Nigel Farage is making those plans. We don't know for sure what his... But I feel that the NHS would not be safe with him, because I've heard him talk about how he doesn't think that this... I mean, it's a very expensive system, and he doesn't think it can continue to operate the way it's operating. And I'd be open to looking at different ways of operating the NHS. But my concern is that there is a lot of American interest, and there's a lot of money to be made from it, and that would be my worry, that needs to be ring-fenced. So I'm with you on that, but a lot of people would deny what you're saying is his plan.
No, he's 100% in it for the money. He says it all the time. I go to America because I represent American companies' interests. All these football vacation fans, no matter what he does, he's always going to be better than the next one. I don't believe so, because he started Brexit knowing from lobbying in the EU there's money to be made out of selling off the family silver. And, you know, they say all the things what Rees-Mogg said never happened. And every trade deal what Kemi tried to do failed, and Liz Truss. So we know, as you say, if you're not a member of a club, you're never going to get the benefits. And the problem is we've lost billions, and people are saying the media are scrutinising him now because he tried to hide these gifts, and there's more to come out. And you can see he, like Trump, he's read the book what Trump wrote, Deny Everything, read by Roy Coyne in The Apprentice film. He's just copying everything. They give ideas at these CPAC conferences. I mean, the Democrats have their conference, but the CPAC conferences are more sinister.
Yeah, deny and deflect, isn't it? Deny and deflect. Joe, brilliant to talk to you. Please call again, won't you?
Thank you.
Call again. I'd love to talk to you again. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's Joe's opinion of what Farage is planning, and more will come out in the future. But I've got to take a break because I'm late.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie, and this is your Talkback Hour. Well, it's the last 5 minutes of your Talkback Hour. Couple of messages. Nigel Farage has screwed up. This stunt of a by-election is a pure distraction and coercion. That's Andrew from Salisbury. This one, Erois, I think it is a fake by-election, same as Andy Burnham. Yeah. And Marcus said, assuming he wins, he'll be in a position of facing another by-election, which would have been forced on what he calls the establishment. He will be able to say that the people of Clacton have already given their verdict. He will probably win again and then emerge from the chaos strengthened. So that's what Mark believes. Let's give the last word, though, to Jerry, who's in Burton-on-Trent. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Petrie. What a lovely treat to talk to you.
Oh, you are smoothie, you.
Oh,
I love it, you charmer. Right.
No, you really are like a lovely, comfy pair of slippers. Or something like that, whatever the expression is.
Oh, thank you.
You can curl up and none of it. It's a lovely pace that you always carry the programme through, and I really enjoy it. I'm much more of a listener than a talker, but I did feel compelled to give you a call. Yeah, I think it's amazing, this guy, Nigel. He's done a phenomenal job with Brexit and everything else. But when you look more closely, I think we're just being gaslighted, Petrie. I mean, yeah, you notice how whenever he's challenged on things, he gets very tetchy. He doesn't tolerate all the people that have joined UKIP that were, potentially a team, he's one by one knocked them on the head. Hence, we've got the problem with Rupert Lowe. And I think over this course of years, you see this other side to Nigel, and he's really saying to the electorate of Clacton, forget rules. I mean, he's an intelligent man. He knew full well that he should declare this. I think people are forgetting this. He knows what the rules are, and especially he's been in politics long enough to criticise others for it. So he's really trying to play a victim here, big time, and he's saying, it's about Nigel all the time, Petrie. You look at someone like Ben Habib. He's a man who cares about the right of politics, and he puts everything on the line. He says, I don't matter. It's the party that matters. Nigel controls reform. It's a company to start with, really. And he controls. And look at the number of candidates he's booted out. I mean, locally, I know several people who, we don't quite like that little indiscretion in the past. No, we're not having you. And it's very much top down and still is. And it's really struggles to get a proper constitution, which is what Ben Habib kept going on about. What we're seeing here is Clacton being told, back me or sack me, doesn't matter what I do. No acknowledgement at all, which he could have done. And we've said it 1,000 times. Oh, just declare it. You said it so many times yourselves.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't be this, none of this would have happened if it had just been declared.
And I can't figure, Petrie, why he thinks we're not intelligent enough to work that out and say, surely, everyone's thinking, well, it's reform or nothing. Nigel's the only man that can do it. So it doesn't matter what he does. He's very quick to criticise others, but he's holier than thou, and we're not being gaslighted. I think he should move over and let someone else take the reins of the party. I really do. It's a sad thing.
Do you think the party would survive that?
Yeah, I actually do.
Okay.
Because the core of the party is such that we have to vote for Nigel because he's the only one